Well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Iowa Gravel Series Podium Podcast. I'm your host, Chris McQueen, and I say this a lot, but I mean it every time. We have an amazing guest for you today. We have Ross Hansen. Ross came in third on the 50K distance at the Soldier Cutoff Hilduro here in 2024 in August. I was not actually there, so I'm very excited to talk to Ross to get a little bit more of the inside scoop of like how that race went. It was, for me, one of the first races that I've not been to on the Iowa Gravel Series, so this is a treat for me. Ross, so good to have you on the podcast this evening.
Thanks for having me.
And Ross, did I did get that right? It was the 50K distance. It was third.
Correct. Yes.
For those that don't see the video, we've got a few stories that we know that we're going to get into here tonight. First off is Ross's origin story and getting into cycling. He mentioned that he's kind of new to this gravel world, and then it sounds like there's a little bit of a story there, which frankly, there's always a story in Pisgah. That race and that route is full of drama. So I'm excited to hear what your experiences were like. So Ross, maybe just to start us off, introduce yourself. Who are you and how did you get into cycling?
Yeah. So I'm Ross Hansen, as you said. The cycling story, I grew up in a small town where you do everything. You play football, basketball, baseball, ran track. And as you get older, those tend to fall to the wayside, where it's like, okay, well, football's done. And I still dabble in basketball, but I'm getting a little old for that. And really probably triathlon over the last 5 years or so, I kind of got interested in that. And I don't really know why. I think I was realizing that I'm getting older. We were playing town team baseball still at the time, but that was kind of fading away as well. And honestly, I think maybe what got me interested more in endurance sports was I saw I don't know if you remember this, the ESPN 30 for 30 or documentary maybe on Lance Armstrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, that guy's kind of a badass, And it was about that time that I think I just realized, if I want to extend my athletic career or whatever you want to call it, I'm probably gonna have to do something a little, lower impact and less risk of injury, things like that. So I started getting interested in triathlon and just have kind of grown that every year to get a little more serious. I try to maybe do a little, bigger race every year or something like that. So that's where, you get interested and you get, an old bike or something like that. And then you get a little more serious and it becomes an addiction maybe in some ways. And it's like, okay, well, now I got to get a better bike because, if I want to be serious about it and learn how to swim and some of that stuff, probably more of a runner by heart, really, when it comes to triathlon and those different things. And here last year, I guess early this year was January, I ended up sustaining a stress fracture in my femur. And at that time, I noticed, on Facebook and stuff like that, the Iowa Gravel Series, and I was like, that sounds kind of cool. Like the gravel thing is growing a little bit, but I couldn't really justify it because I was kind of focusing on triathlon and things like that. And at that point, my wife is like, enough's enough. You got your bike and all this different stuff. Anyway, so I sustained this injury and I couldn't run for like 3 months. And that was the point where it's like, okay, I'm getting a gravel bike. And that's just how it's going to go. Because you realize, okay, I can't pound the pavement anymore like I used to. Training, you go for rides on the highway and stuff like that, but around here there's really no good paved roads to ride, and it was almost suicidal at times to try to train on a highway, so I completely did away with that. So all you do is just spin your bike in the basement, which is boring. So, and there's plenty of gravel and dirt roads around here. So I thought, that'd be perfect. I could kind of do some training, maybe do a race or two. So that's kind of how it all started. Did Silver City. We had baseball down in Omaha actually that weekend. My son was playing baseball, and I thought that's perfect. I'll go do the race in the morning, hit baseball up by noon, And so that, I guess that's how it all started. As far as Silver City goes,
well, I'm going to pause you there for a second.
Yeah.
So are you saying that Silver City and the Soldier Cutoff Hill Duro, are those the only two races for gravel that you've ever done?
Correct. Yes.
Oh, well, I'm very excited to hear that, this is your first one. So take me back then just a little bit, like Silver City, going into Silver City for that first race. And actually, maybe we should even step back even a little further back into the triathlons. What triathlons have you done in the area? What were some of the smaller or bigger triathlon events you've done in the past?
I've done Sioux Center has a little sprint triathlon. I've done that several times. Yankton. They're actually, I think they're done now, but they had a South Dakota triathlon series as well. It was like a point series. It was pretty cool. So I did a few sprint triathlons, mostly up in South Dakota, Yankton. Let's see here. I did the Olympic in Omaha a couple years ago. Did it, and that's when I started to kind of grow things, realizing like I need to go longer, especially as I get older. Did Okoboji a couple times. Did an Olympic in Clear Lake. That was the Iowa State Championship a couple years ago. And then last year did the Ironman 70.3 in Des Moines.
Congratulations. Did you get, well, I guess it's a set. Well, did you get the tattoo?
I did not. No. There's plenty of people with the tattoos though. And my buddy and I did it together. We kind of joked about it, like, so you can only get half of a tattoo if you only do the 70.3.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, I didn't. I have some friends that have done Ironmans, like multiple. Like I have a friend out in Idaho. She's done, I think, she's well over 30 or 50 Ironmans at this point.
Full Ironmans.
Full Ironmans. Like it's, but it's one of those things where it's like, the best Ironmans are doctors, sort of thing, where it's like you can take that time and availability and have all the equipment and recovery and knowledge and everything. And so, fantastic. But for you, so it sounds like, you did Des Moines, you did the half, the 70.3, and was that around when you kind of started having these injuries, or were there other races?
It was actually, let's see, I did a half marathon in Lincoln, I think in November, and following that, I'd started playing basketball and some things like that, and just started having some hip pain, and it just progressed to whenever I would run, it became increasingly painful, and ultimately just led to an MRI, and it's like, okay, you got a stress fracture in your hip, so basically I shut everything down for 2 or 3 months, but I could cycle. After a month or so, you can bike and swim, just can't really run. So that's where I kind of set my sights on doing a little more cycling and got the gravel bike. Silver City was, I think, maybe the second or third time I'd actually ridden the bike. So,
well, I mean, I'm looking at your Soldier Cutoff times, and you made a good showing there. Now, granted, that half is a little bit shorter. Oh, and you came in second at Silver City as well.
I did.
On the 50K. Yeah. So I forgot about that. So I mean, you've got 2 podiums to you, and that the 50K at an hour and 51 on the Silver City race is what I have you at, and so I mean that for a freshman attempt, that's a pretty good time, and so maybe start us off there. Like, what was it like at Silver City?
Well, it's kind of ironic actually, because you do triathlon, you're used to the pavement and just putting your head down and going. And I'd mentioned to some of the nurses at work before I left on Friday, I'm doing this gravel race tomorrow, and they're like, "Well, don't break your leg or whatever." And I'm like, like I'm gonna be riding like 15 miles an hour on a gravel road. I grew up in the country, like this is no big deal. And I get halfway through the race, and I think I was leading at that point. And I'm looking for the signs, and I came over a hill, and I see that I've got to take like a sharp left. and made a rookie mistake and tried to just turn my bike, not realizing I was in gravel. And I totally biffed it and went sliding down the hill on my side. I don't even remember Silver City. I was the guy that came in with my singlet all tore up with blood running down my leg.
Yes, I do remember we had to get you cleaned up just a little. It wasn't bad. And so you're in the medical. Are you a nurse? Are you a physician? Are you a?
I'm a physician assistant. Yeah.
Okay.
Assistant. So, yeah, the very hip that I had the stress fracture on is the one I landed on. Anyway, so yeah, I crashed, picked up my water bottles, checked myself, hopped back on the bike, and kept pedaling. Yeah. So it was challenging, like the rock and the gravel and things like that. It was hard. It wasn't just going out and riding, 25, 30 miles or whatever. It was handling the terrain was the thing that caught me off guard the most, I think. But yeah, for the most part, we kept it upright and it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Silver City is not what I would call like the most intro. I mean, it's not especially technical, but because it does have a lot of B road and has a lot of transitions from this last year we had a lot more loose gravel than some of the previous years that we've had before. So I mean that adds a technicality to it. But I think also what makes Silver City a little bit difficult is the first 5 miles of it are just rollers. Like it's just like if you're not careful, it tuckers you out in the first 5 miles. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the 50K or the 100K, like to get out into the other stuff that's kind of fun once you get out there in that region, you just have this long series of rollers.
To be honest with you, I didn't mind riding up the hills. It was when I went down that first hill and I got up to almost 40 miles an hour, I thought, oh boy. All right, I'm just white knuckling it, thinking if I just the slightest wrong move here and I'm going to wipe out. So that was another eye opener that you can still go really fast on the gravel. But yeah, it was the heavy rock and things like that were kind of difficult to navigate. So yeah.
And then going down always kind of messes with your head a little bit too. Have you found you're able to handle speed a little bit better now, or is speed still a challenge? Are there where are you with that?
I'm still learning to trust the bike, especially wiping out the first race. It was like, oh man, I got to be careful, and I think that's one of the guys I was talking to after the race. He said you just got to trust the bike. So that's something I'm kind of learning to do. Find a good path. Stay on a good line, and I'm riding the brake. I'm riding the brake plenty. Don't worry. I'm not ready to just pin my ears back and go. But it's a lot of fun.
I'm gonna ask one question because I think this is the thing that it's probably one of those things that took me too long to learn, and so I'm always sensitive to it. What's your pressure in what size are your tires on your gravel bike, and what pressure do you run them at?
Oh man. I haven't looked at it for a while, so I want to say they're 32. Does that sound right? 32s?
Could be. 32 would be a little small. 42 would be bigger.
Okay.
38 is pretty standard on a gravel bike. That's about where like most cyclocross bikes are. And then more modern bikes are anywhere between basically a 35, 40, 45 would be pretty wide on a gravel bike at this point. So
yeah, but they're a little smaller than most that I saw. And I was worried about that in Silver City for sure, riding through that heavy rock, like I'm going to pop a tire or something, but I never did, fortunately. Pressure wise, oh man, if you're asking me about my triathlon bike, I would know all these questions. It's a lower pressure, like 40 pounds. Does that sound right? Something like that.
It can be. If you're, this is for me. This is the thing that I think really unlocked it for riding fast on gravel in Iowa. And I didn't grow up here, so I'm always learning something. But I have a 45 centimeter tire, so a little bit bigger than yours. And I have it with sealant in it, so it doesn't have a tube in it. It's a tubeless setup, and so I will run anywhere, and I weigh about anywhere between 170 and 180 pounds, depending on where I am in the season. And so I will run those tires at anywhere between 30 to 38, sometimes 40 PSI. And I definitely tend to be on like the harder end. There are some people that are lighter, maybe 150, 160 pounds, and they will go even lower. They'll go 20, 28, 30 pounds, or 30 PSI. And the reason I mention all this is because that suspension, like those tires are the suspension force so much in these bikes. The carbon or having a nicer, aluminum bike will kind of even out some of the bumps and everything. But you end up with a lot more control if the tire can just roll over something bumpy and absorb it instead of jerking you all around and everything. And so that's the other area of like finding that right pressure in your tires where you're still fast, but you can take some of the bumps. For me, has helped me trust the bike, like you said, because you do, like, if the tire can absorb that chatter from all the gravel and things like that, it's a lot easier to trust it, and it's going to go in a straight line. It's going to go where you want it to go. It creates some other handling issues maybe if you're really pushing into a turn, but at least on the downhills it gives you a little bit more confidence and comfort.
Yeah, I did just look it up, Chris, and I write a Trek checkpoint and it says they're 40s, so I was way off.
You were, but yeah, so that's always one thing that I suggest for folks is like play with that PSI, and if it does that pressure, and if you do have room to try to go lower than what you usually would, because I came from road as well, and I was used to being like, all right, I've got my 28s on and I'm going to pump those suckers up to 90 PSI so that I've got a nice fast low rolling resistance tire, and I can just hook. And trusting that I can put much lower pressure in my tires took me a while.
It was really interesting talking to people after the race. Like you realize how much you have to learn, even in the cafe afterwards. I was talking to this guy, and the waitress overheard. She's like, "Oh, did you go OTB?" I was just like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Did you go over the bars?" Like, no, but now I know what that means. I got it, and go OTB.
Well, I'm taking a class right now to be on a ski patrol team, and I don't come from a medical background, and so a lot of this, like, I'm learning a whole lot about like pneumothorax, and learning a whole lot about just basic emergency care as like an emergency responder. And I will say that, like, isn't it neat to learn something new in middle age? Isn't that just part of the fun almost? I don't know. Are you enjoying that, or is it hard for you?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me feel like an idiot, and I pull up, and I literally just bought this bike a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna ride with you guys. And they're talking about their suspension, their tire pressure and stuff like that. And I'm like, I've got air in my tires. That's pretty much all I know right now.
So Silver City gets done. You come in second. That's a great feeling. What do you feel like you learned between Silver City and Pisgah? Aw,
I gotta visit.
She's welcome to join us.
She's okay. She's just trying to avoid going to bed, I think. Night.
Well,
she's good.
I've been there as well. Yeah. So what do you feel like you've learned between that Silver City race and as you were getting up to Pisgah? What were some of the things that you found you were working on in between? Because that was May, Pisgah's in August, so you had 3 months.
Yeah. It was more about, to me, obviously I was a little wounded, probably internally more than anything, about crashing and trying to, like this guy said, like trusting the bike and trying to maintain momentum through turns and stuff like that, but still being cautious enough that I'm not going to wipe out again. And then I was prepared again for it because, talking to these guys after Silver City, they're all like, because I asked them, like, is this what it's usually like the kind of the heavier rock and stuff like that? Oh, they're like, oh yeah. And they were talking about times where it got so muddy that they would have to get off their bike and just run with it, or like they had paint sticks they were using to scrape the wheels off so they didn't get clogged around the brakes and stuff like that. So I was like preparing myself mentally for for something like that. And honestly, Pisgah was a joy compared to my experience in Silver City. As far as the course and everything is beautiful. It was very scenic. I wanted to stop a couple times and just take pictures. But so otherwise, as far as the game plan went, there was really, it was just show up and go. It's more about the experience at this point than anything. I've got so much to learn that I didn't go in with any big expectations.
What's kind of your training philosophy right now? I mean, were you in are you a very like structured training sort of setup? Or are you more like, hey, I just try and make sure I get out on the bike every once in a while? Like, how are you training for these events right now?
Right now, well, unfortunately,
or right then.
Yeah, I actually a couple of months ago, I was training for the Des Moines Marathon. Had another stress fracture, so had to take another month or so off. So I'm kind of just getting back on the bike now. But typically there's more structure, I would say, where I'm running, 3 or 4 days a week, probably on the bike 2 or 3 times a week, maybe. And yeah, doing maybe kind of, a longer, maybe steady ride, and then maybe doing some intervals at times too, to try to build some power. That's probably something I lack. So yeah, I would say probably more structured. Yeah. Than just going out and saying, I'm just out, for a joyride and whatever happens, on race day happens. But there's a little more competitive to it, or competitiveness to it, I guess you would say, than that. There's a method behind some of the madness, but for the most part, I'm just trying to enjoy it and stay fit. And whatever I can find time for, that's what I do.
Yeah. Indoor trainer or all outdoor?
Typically indoor, because it's just easier. Yeah. If I get a nice night, or afternoon or something, I'm gonna take the gravel bike out. Doesn't happen as much as I would like it to. Most of the time it's weather permitting, or time permitting. It's easier just to hop on the trainer in the basement, but I hate that thing. It's just a hamster wheel.
Yeah, it's hard. I haven't ridden around Wakefield, but how are the roads around there?
Not bad. We've got a fair amount of dirt roads. You've got, if you go one direction, it's pretty flat. If you go another, it's hilly. There's a pretty diverse terrain. So I would say all in all, it's pretty good for a gravel rider. Yeah.
Well, then let's. What about nutrition? Like, where do you kind of sit on the nutrition learning curve, sort of thing? Or is it something that you think about a lot, or are you?
During the race or throughout the week?
I think a lot of nutrition starts during the week. So I'm curious, like, what do you think about with nutrition? What's kind of your philosophy? And then I'm curious, yes, as well, like what you're doing on the bike, since you're still doing the kind of that 50K distance. Nutrition doesn't necessarily play as much into it, but
right.
Curious where you're at and what you're thinking about.
Yeah. I think about it a little bit, especially, when I'm heavy into training, obviously, fueling the workouts. And then once you're done, obviously getting your carbs and some protein and things like that to help your body kind of absorb the workout. Hydration obviously is a big issue. Do I eat little kid diet sometimes where it's mac and cheese and hot dogs? Absolutely. So
it's one of the perks of being
right.
an endurance cyclist. You get to eat like a kid.
You get to eat, exactly. And there's so much truth to that too, where it's like, man, I just biked for an hour and a half. I can eat whatever I want now. So yeah, there's a lot of that, but I don't have much of a sweet tooth or anything like that, fortunately. So I'm not tempted by cookies and cake and all that type of stuff, really. But for the most part, it's just, I don't have a real science to it, no. But I guess I do understand that if you're gonna have a big workout, you got to fuel it, and then you got to replenish afterwards, basically.
Yeah, that feeling is so important, and I'm so glad that you were blessed without a sweet tooth. The main reason that keeps me on the bike is because I will gladly destroy. I've told my wife that, and most people that I know, that like, please do not give me pumpkin cookies. I like I don't know if you've ever had a pumpkin cookie where it's kind of like a cakey chocolate chip cookie, but with pumpkin. Those are my kryptonite. I will gladly eat half a dozen to a dozen pumpkin cookies in one sitting. Yeah, it's brutal. So okay, it sounds like then we're getting to Pisgah. And did you decide to sign up for Soldier Cutoff Hilduro after Silver City was done, and you're like, okay, I want more abuse, or was it always the plan to sign up for that one?
I think I'd seen the schedule for the gravel series, and I thought, okay, those are reachable for me. They're both within a couple hours. Silver City worked out on the schedule, and that was my closest race. I think it was only like an hour 15 minutes from home. So I think I signed up. Of course, I had to wait and just make sure nothing popped up on the schedule. But a couple weeks prior, signed up for Silver City, and really look forward to it. That's one thing with the gravel races versus road running races versus triathlon. It's stress free. It's such a pleasure to just get in the car and drive to a gravel race and just hop on the bike and go ride, versus triathlon, where it's very stressful. You dread it for a week prior at least. And there's all these different things you have to organize. And like, I remember Silver City, I showed up and I was like, I literally can just jump on the bike, ride to the start and take off. And that's the end of it. Even nutrition wise, the longer, running or triathlon races, there, it's like, okay, I've got to do this at, X minutes and whatever for hydration. There was some of that on the gravel rides, but for the most part, you don't have to get off the bike and run or anything like that. So it's really stress free. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, we don't yet have to figure out the timing on your transitions, and you're not having to stage your shoes on the bike just right so that you can slip right into them and everything. So yeah, in that regard, it is a little bit less stressful. It is definitely more stressful when you come across a muddy section and you're like, oh my dear goodness, how am I going to get through this?
Yeah, how am I going to?
There's some different stresses, but I hear you. So, like I mentioned, my niece got married that weekend, and so we went out to Utah, and thankfully Omaha Velo and the Iowa Gravel Series board, kind of head up with Dave Cleesby and Michelle Cleesby, they put on Soldier Cutoff Hilduro, and from what I heard, it turned out pretty well. So walk me through kind of your day as you were setting up and what that was like. I'm honestly very curious as well, given that I'm looking at a little bit of the terrain around Wakefield, and obviously there are some hills classic in Nebraska, but the hills, especially the less hills in Pisgah, are even more pronounced than Silver City. So I'm curious, like, how it was going into those hills, and if you felt like you were prepared for them.
Yeah, to be honest, I thought Silver City was more grueling than the less hills. Like I said, I don't really mind the hills, to be honest with you. I've got a friend that I have ridden with before many times. He does triathlon as well, and he always is like, "Oh, you're just a hill grinder. You love hills." I'm like, I don't love hills any more than you do, but I'm not a real big guy. I mean, I'm 6'1", but I only weigh like 155 pounds, so I don't know if that's a factor or what, but I don't.
That sounds like a recipe for high. That sounds like a recipe for high strength to weight ratio to me. So it sounds like yes, it's a lot easier to enjoy hills when that ratio is on your side.
Yeah. So I guess I don't mind grinding up a hill. So that part didn't really bother me that much, to be honest with you. I remember, I'm trying to think about how it went. I was worried about because I remember in Silver City I had this issue too. So I don't have like a Garmin or anything like that. I basically just have a speedometer on my bike. And so I just try to kind of not memorize, but have a good idea where I'm going. And I set my cell phone with me in case I have issues. And and there was a guy in front of me, and I kind of was holding back, knowing he was the only person in front of me. We're probably 10 miles into it, knowing that I wasn't exactly sure where I was going. And they kind of warned us, like, the signage should be there, but it might not be. And finally we were going up a hill, and I was like, okay, I'm going to pass this guy. And probably a mile or two down the road, we came onto the highway, and I knew there was a stretch on the highway. I remember that from looking at the map. And I'm cruising, I'm looking for the sign. And finally it's been like 2 or 3 miles. And I was like, wow, this is great. And I'm like, I should have seen a sign by now. So I pull over and I stop, and I'm looking at my phone, and I had printed out a map, and I probably sat there for 5 minutes. And finally I'm like, I just got to turn around and go back to where I came from. So come to find out, I'd ridden about 3 miles too far.
Oh man.
I missed my turn, had to ride back. And by that time it was hair on fire, just riding as hard as I can. And honestly, that was probably better off than riding in front by myself for the last 12 miles or whatever. Because it was more fun just to really, pedal hard and try to, knock people off or whatever. And really push it through the whole race. So that's what happened at Pisgah. I missed the turn.
You missed one turn.
Ended up riding probably about 5 miles too far.
Yeah. Well, then I'm even more impressed, because I think your time came in close to, like, I believe it was around an hour 35. Now, it's not even a true 50K on Pisgah. I think it's closer to like 20, just a little over 20 miles. It's shorter, because the whole race is only like 58 or 56, because generally what I've done, Pisgah's, the Soldier Cutoff Hill Duro is kind of an exception to the rules in that regard, because most other races, your fastest folks in the 100K come in around about 3 hours. And what I've found with Pisgah is, even being shorter, people are still coming in around about 3 hours. And it's mainly because there's just these long climbs, and you only got 2 of the climbs. There was 2 more on the 100K that usually challenge folks. There is one section I wanted to ask you about. It's one of the minimum maintenance roads. It had kind of an S turn in it. Curious how you felt going through that. It's not ideal. It's
was that the one through the field?
There's on the 50K you hit, I think it's Peach first, that kind of goes up through the hill, and it's kind of the first big climb. You're kind of basically flat with little tiny bumps here for a little bit, and then you cross the freeway and you make a right past Preparation Canyon, and then you start climbing, and then you make a quick little jog onto the highway and back on, and it cuts like straight through the hill and keeps climbing even farther.
Yes.
So that's kind of the first climb.
Yep.
And then you descend just a little bit on that, and then you have a slow climb up for a while, and then there's this one area where you just turn onto like a cornfield.
Yes.
And you're like, is this a road, or is this just a cornfield?
I saw the sign and I thought, this cannot be right. Somebody's screwing with us. And I looked down, and this is when I was behind everybody. And I looked down and I saw a couple of guys like a quarter mile ahead. I'm like, okay, I guess this is where we're going. And there were some washouts that were probably 4 feet deep, and you're riding on just a little tiny path. And I'm like, if I make one move right or left here, I'm going into one of those crevices and my bike is destroyed. I think I saw 1 or 2 people get off their bikes and just start pushing them. And I didn't blame them.
Yeah, no, which is totally fine. Maybe before I give my excuse, I mean, would you do that again?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It was awesome. I mean, if it would have turned out differently, I'd probably say no, but it was cool. Yeah, I thought the whole course was great, but that was definitely unique.
Yeah, for me, part of what I like about gravel cycling is the adventure, is the idea, like kind of going somewhere where he's like, man, where does this go? And that for me has always been the drive for cycling, is to basically see a road head off somewhere, and I'm like, well, I just got to know where that's going to go. And So I try to bring a little bit of that with. There's the guy who owns that property right there. I've chatted with him several times, and he's very kind to let us use it. It's a B road, but it's probably getting close to being a C road, which is in Iowa. That's when they essentially give the road back over to the landowner, and then it becomes a lot harder to use. But I'm grateful for the opportunities for us to kind of explore, and it brings me a bit of joy when I hear other people, not minding that ever so little bit of danger that some of these gravel races.
I agree. I think that's part of the draw of cycling for sure, is you're taking on the terrain, and there, like you said, there's that bit of adventure that comes with it, where you just have to take it on no matter what comes at you. I used to, same with triathlon. I used to always say, like, it's that I'm going to jump in the lake today, and I might not survive. I'm not sure. I might drown today. So yeah, that's part of the fun of it, is just not knowing what you're going to find.
Yeah. It's weird that we have to, I guess it speaks to our very safe lives, where we're like, our hobbies have to be the things that are going to kill us instead of something else. That's probably a little dark there, but so, well, congratulations on that. So now, as you think about this last season that you had, what's next? What are you thinking for 2025?
I think I'm going to get a Garmin with a map on it, so I don't get lost. That's what I'm asking for Christmas anyway. I'm looking forward to doing that and more, as far as what I did last year. Hoping to build on it. Again, as I age, this is something that I'm hoping to be able to do into the next, decade or so. And yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm just getting started with gravel, I guess, but I'm really hoping next year to be able to do a couple centuries for sure. Did the shorter races this year just to kind of, like I said, get my feet wet, and it's always time permitting when you have kids that are active, especially in the summertime. It's easy if I could say I'm going to go do a race and I'll be home by noon versus I'll be home tonight. So just looking forward to, I guess, maybe expanding, doing a few more races, getting a little deeper into it.
Awesome. Well, I know of a few. So there's the Louisville Classic in April. We're helping out with that because the Omaha Velo team puts that on, and that's kind of due south past, a little south of Omaha from you. I haven't announced this fully, but it will be known by the time this podcast gets posted that Pisgah is going to be in September for 2025, which I hope will actually make it, weather-wise, I hope that works out for us well and everything. Glenwood is going to be back to both men's and women's, and so
excellent.
You'll have an opportunity to ride the Glenwood. That'll be in August. We're flipping those two dates basically to see if we can get more people to come out to the Soldier Cutoff. Hilduro is kind of the thinking with swapping those 2 days. And then Silver City is going to be on again, so we definitely hope to have you there. But there are some other great events in and around this area. If you hear of any interesting ones up towards you or the South Dakota area, absolutely let us know, because I think it's always fun to see and go to these other events. There's just so many places to explore.
Yeah. I haven't heard much from the South Dakota area, which is kind of surprising, given the terrain up there too. But yeah, for sure, always keeping your eyes peeled for local races.
Yeah. So last question I want to kind of ask, and I ask this often, and I mentioned it when we were chatting before the call, is if there's anything that you would change in cycling, if you had a magic wand, is there something that you always wonder, like, oh man, this is something that I wish was different with cycling? Is maybe you're too new that it's all shiny and honeymoon period, but is there anything that you wish you had a magic wand that you could do differently in cycling?
You're talking gravel?
Yeah, gravel cycling, but it can be general. If there's something that comes to mind,
Man, I honestly don't have any really good thoughts there. Like I said, I'm so new to it. I'm still learning. That I don't have any. No, like I said, I don't have anything good to say on that one. Like I said, it's been fun. It's been stress free. I love talking to the people after races. It's been a real joy so far.
Awesome. Well, very glad to hear it. I hope we can see you out at a lot more. Hope to see your family out there. It looks like you have some young ones, and it's always interesting and always for me a joy when we can see more young folks getting out on bikes as well and stuff. So that's an area that, like, that's my area of magic wand right now, where I'm like, the more that we can do to get juniors out on the bikes and on these events is something that we're pushing on for 2025. So if you have any ideas there, let us know. But Ross, this has been fantastic getting to know you, and yeah, thanks so much for your time this evening.
No, thank you. You know, it's good to sit and talk to someone who understands, cycling and endurance sports and things like that. Most people think you're crazy for doing these kinds of things.
And you are.
So, yeah, well, I understand that. But it's nice to talk to like-minded people. So,
well, awesome. Well, thank you again. I hope you have a fantastic evening, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.